The moments when I felt like walking away, and my goodness, there were many moments when I wanted to give up. Moments like, for example, at Radio 702 in the early days, some white listeners of the station would phone and say, "What are you doing on a white radio station? Must go and work for Radio Zulu." And I'll get home and I'll say Ditinya, I can't do this. It's just too much. She'll say to me, "Focus on what you love. You love this? Keep on doing it. Don't listen to the other voices." Because this word lifetime has made me think about how have I held this career of more than 4 decades together? What actually held this together? Call it God, call it grace, call it the stubborn, inexplicable belief that your life has a purpose, okay? That isn't finished yet. Well, I call it faith. Now, today I want to talk to you about something I don't visit often publicly, a place of deep gratitude. Now, in May, I received the Media Leader of the Year Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2026 Future of Leadership Awards that is supported and delivered by the Future Leader Forum. Now, this achievement I've been sitting with because of that word, lifetime. Single word, lifetime, especially when it's applied to you. And I've been sitting with it, not because I'm overwhelmed by the title, not because I'm overwhelmed by this trophy, because this word, lifetime, has made me think about how have I held this career of more than 4 decades together? What actually held this together? And I've come to realize that after 4 decades, multiple countries, multiple careers within a career, apartheid, exile, reinvention, there are honestly 4 values, 4 aspects of my life that have really been the foundation of this, okay? There's been the architecture underneath everything that I've done when I look back. Let me start with values. Now, values are not a strategy, okay? For example, I didn't sit down when I was 21 years old and map out on a piece of paper that, I want to do this and do this and do that and do that into the future, okay? When I go back to Soweto, growing up in White City, Jabavu, as that young boy, born in 1959, I look back and I see, having been schooled in the 60s and 70s, those years of turbulence, those years of fire, okay, those years when futures of young black South Africans were deliberately, systematically narrowed, I was assisted by values in that environment. That environment taught me what nobody else could teach me. Now, I could have grown up giving up thinking my voice doesn't matter, because if you're young and black, you didn't count perhaps, okay? Survival maybe was just enough for me, just ask for survival. But somewhere very early in my life, I can't tell you exactly when and how, I decided what I stood for, telling the truth and giving other people a space to get their voices to be heard, to tell their stories. Very early on in my life, I decided giving people a voice that were not being a part, although not being heard, was important. Refusing to be erased or to erase others. Now, those values didn't come from a career plan, a well-mapped out plan. They came from lived experience. They came from watching what happened when people in power told stories that often left others out. Now, values, it turns out, are longer lasting than circumstances, okay? And then there was the inner voice. We all have it. We all have an inner voice. Call it gut, call it intuition, but it speaks to us. I've often said, and let me begin here, and I mean it completely and honestly, that if it hadn't been for Radio Mozambique, I would never have become a journalist. Exile, by the way, has a way of either breaking you or building you. If you ask many people who've been through that part, you'll understand. And for me, Radio Mozambique in 1980 was actually the beginning. Not the beginning I had planned. When I was young, I dreamt of being a pediatrician. I wanted to be a medical doctor. But it was the beginning I was given, and I took it. Because something in me recognized it, not logically, not because someone had laid down that clear career path and said, well, Dan, this is a smart move, you must do this and do that. But because there was a pull, there was something inside that inner voice said to me, this is where you belong. This is where you're supposed to be. In fact, I started Radio Mozambique in 1980. By 1982, I had been offered a scholarship to go and study in Canada. By then, I had fallen in love with the media, and I just said to me, thank you. I said to them, those who were offering the scholarship, thank you very much. I don't need it now. Some people thought I was crazy, but my inner voice said, you are where you are supposed to be. So I listened to that inner voice. You know, even when it made no obvious sense, like turning down a scholarship. I mean, who in the 80s, black South African coming from Soweto would turn down a scholarship? But 2 years of the journey already in the media space told me you are in the right space. So sometimes the life you didn't plan is actually the life that makes you. But you only find out if you are willing to listen to what's pulling you and then followed it. I could not have followed it out alone. Because that's where faith comes in. And when I say faith, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality, because that's what comes from inside us. Now, faith is when you hold on to the journey that you are on, even if there's a mist on the road, you can't see it. Okay, you can't see what's going on. When you can't see the next step, you want to give up, and you don't know if there will be a next step. That is what I call faith. In those moments, something held me, okay? I mean, I wanted to study. I'm turning down a scholarship. I don't know the road ahead really with media. Faith took me there, and my inner voice said I must stay there. Call it God. Call it grace. Call it the stubborn, inexplicable belief that your life has a purpose, okay? That isn't finished yet. Well, I call it faith. And I don't say that lightly or for effect. I say it because it is true. I've lived through that, and it has brought me to where I am today, okay? Because there is no version of this story of my career that actually makes sense without faith. Every time I sit back and think and look back, I realize that faith has been very key. Okay, of course, your journey and in my journey, my career has not just been a product of talent alone. I'm grateful for that. It's not been a product of hard work alone. I'm grateful for that. I've put in a lot of hours into what I do, or just simply timing. It's a product of being held together by something larger than myself, something higher than myself, even in the moments when I couldn't feel it clearly, even in the moments when I doubted. That is what spirituality actually is all about. That is what it has meant for me. Not a set of rules, a set of a clear strategy or a map, not a performance, but an anchor. Faith and spirituality is something that has kept me from drifting away from myself when the currents were strong. And then there is family. I think about my wife, Odette. We met in Maputo in 1982. She was also working in Radio Mozambique at the time. And she has walked every decade of this career with me, step by step. Radio Mozambique, yes. BBC, yes, when I was a correspondent for Focus on Africa in the mid-80s. The Radio 702, yes. The Prime Media, yes, and recently the ENCA, yes. And of course, the book that I published in 2021, the podcast that I'm now starting, Don't Die Unknown, she's still there. The moments when I felt like walking away, and my goodness, there were many moments when I wanted to give up. Moments like, for example, at Radio 702 in the early days, some white listeners of the station would phone and say, what are you doing on a white radio station? You must go and work for Radio Zulu. And I'll get home and I'll say Ditinya, I can't do this. It's just too much. She'll say to me, focus on what you love. You love this, keep on doing it. Don't listen to the other voices. To be believed in this way on a steady basis across decades, across different companies, across setbacks, across the ordinary grinding difficulty of a very long career that I've been on, it's a gift. It's a gift I have never tried to take for granted. I will never, ever take it for granted. I think also about the mentors who shaped me. My first editor was a Scottish man, Ian Christie. May his soul rest in peace. He really forged me through very difficult years in Southern Africa as a mentor, as my first editor. Well, like others, he's gone now, but their voices travel with me. I carry them with me. They turn up at critical moments, asking the right questions, stating something in me that might not otherwise have, but that might otherwise have wavered. Okay? That's what family means in the broadest sense. Okay? The people whose presence stays with you long after they've left the room. And I think about the listeners and the viewers as well. Listeners on Radio Mozambique, BBC, so many years ago, and 702, and recently viewers on ENCA. And those are the people sometimes I bump into at airports, at shopping malls over the years, and they look at me, they say to me, Dan, your work has meant something to me. That too is kind of family, and I appreciate it. The community, of course, that forms around honest work over time. Now, when I wrote my memoir in 2021, I Don't Want to Die Unknown, people asked, Dan, are you afraid of being forgotten? Well, let me tell you, it was never about fame. Never about fame. I think about the young journalists who have come to me uncertain of their own voices, but now who've grown into formidable communication and communicators and leaders in their own spaces. I think about audiences who've listened to me on radio, whether Radio Mozambique's English service, 702, and also who've watched me and seen me on television, be it SABC Africa or now recently ENC. I think about them because they have been there listening and they have given me that energy to carry on. I mean, they've been informed, connected, less alone. Now, if I've helped someone start their day, either on radio and recently on television, with clarity, I believe that day was not wasted. And I also think about the people who will read my book long after I'm gone, who will find in those pages a boy from Soweto who refused to be erased, who went to Mozambique in exile, running away from the apartheid security branch in 1979, who then came back, worked, struggled, built, lost, rebuilt, and kept going. Not because he had everything figured out, but because he had four things that held him. Values had taught me what I stand for. An inner voice that has told me where to go next, even if the road was not clear, and I trusted. Faith that has held me when the road disappeared, and family in every form that it took that have walked beside me at all stages. I know that some of you currently are in the middle of your own journeys, maybe, and maybe you are currently in a very hard part. Now, remember this. Legacy isn't built in one day. Okay? It's built in moments of hard work. It's also not built in moments of applause. It's built on the Tuesday mornings, okay, when no one is watching and you still show up. Okay? It's built in the conversation with someone who needed exactly to hear your words, what you could say, you didn't even know that they'll be impactful. It's built in those quiet decision moments, in that quiet decision you've made again and again to stay true to the things that anchor you. You know what those things are. In fact, you've always known. So here I am, 66 years old, more than 4 decades in broadcasting, an award that says your lifetime has counted. I receive it not as a conclusion. I receive it as an encouragement to keep contributing, to keep mentoring, to keep serving, to keep asking those necessary but hard questions sometimes, and to keep building this space of conversation where stories that matter are told and legacies are honored. Now, because as long as I breathe and I have a microphone, I intend to keep living up to the name of this podcast. Thank you for listening to Don't Die Alone. I'm Dan Moyane. Until next time, keep making your life count.